There was an article posted on ESPN.com just the other day that I skimmed through because I don't know that it would necessarily was going to provide me with any more information, although they had a lot of player and coaches quotes, the Joshua Perrys and the Urban Meyers and some other players that were on that 2015 team. So with the NFL draft coming up this next weekend, they were highlighting that stellar 2016 draft class from Ohio State, but also parlaying that into what happened in 2015. To read the first paragraph, you would have thought that 2015 team went 7-5. But anyway, they lost the game. It was to a really good Michigan State team, not an elite team, not a team that was comparable to them talent-wise, but a team that made the playoffs and only lost one game. But we talked about the 2015 team. But again, it was just another time or opportunity to review just the talent on that team. I saw a tweet this week, and I'll set you guys up for however you want to take the rest of this portion of the conversation. I responded to a tweet from a Clemson heckler who said, if we got the 2018 Clemson team together with the 2014 Ohio State team, what do you think it would be, like 45-0? And I quickly reminded them that, first of all, we don't know. That's one thing about these discussions. We can throw out whatever numbers we want about what the final score would be. We will never know. So let's understand that. We will never know. And then secondly, the talent on that 2014-15 team, my goodness. And I was berated for calling Michael Thomas and Ezekiel Elliott Hall of Famers. I made the disclaimer, they are on a Hall of Fame pace. I don't think that can be discounted. Zeke Elliott, I looked at the numbers. He's led the league in rushing 2 out of 4 seasons. He's led the league in yardage per game 3 out of his 4 seasons in the NFL. He's on a pace to go to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Michael Thomas is on a pace to be the greatest receiver in the history of the NFL.
Yeah, you make a great point. And, I think, again, it's fun to have arguments like this because, as you said, we won't ever know how it could possibly turn out. But I look at these teams and you watch them. All you can go by is how they dominated the teams that they played. And again, by the end of the 2014 season, Ohio State was playing at a pretty high level. I mean, did they play at that level, when they played Virginia Tech back in week 2? No, they weren't very good at all. But by the end of the season, they were playing at an extremely high level. And so many of those young guys like Bosa and Elliott in particular were second-year players that year who were just coming into their own. And it's kind of the thing that by midway through your second year, you become a veteran player, and the team kind of grows up. And I think that is in a sense your level of play from where you are at the beginning of the season to your level of play at the end of the season. Have you improved? Are you getting better? Are you now among one of the best teams in the country? And I think no question in 2014, that's what Ohio State did. 2015, they kind of rested on their laurels. They had some off the field distractions, some different things that kind of took them out of where they could have been, what they should have been. And it's hard to repeat. We don't see very often that teams are able to repeat. Alabama's done it once or twice here recently, but otherwise it's been very difficult in college football to get a group of 19, 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old guys to stay and play at that kind of peak level over a 2 or 3 year period. It's just, there's so many trappings that go along with this, things that people fall into away from the playing field that, and you have guys peel off and go to the NFL as well, key players. So it is difficult just as guys are reaching their peak that the team has to kind of start over and reload and rebuild. But this is what makes college football so great, is the arguments, and the Ohio State people are always going to argue our team was better. The Clemson people would always argue our team, 15-0, however you want to put it, was this and that and whatever. And good for them, and it makes for a great argument in the off season, particularly in this hiatus when we don't have a whole heck of a lot going on that we can talk about. But um, as I said, I'm doing a study now, going through all these recruiting classes, and Ohio State had a recruiting class in 2002 that was just something otherworldly. I mean, when you talk about, they had guys like Mike DeAndrea and Derek Morris, who were national top 100 players who never really contributed. I don't think Derek Morris ever even played it down for Ohio State. He had Prop 48 and extra benefits issues. Mike DeAndrea could never get healthy. They had two real misses there, but then you have Maurice Claret, who gave him one great year, AJ Hawk, Bobby Carpenter,
Mike Kudla,
Antonio Holmes, Doug Dadish, TJ Downing. I mean, so many guys, and I haven't even mentioned Troy Smith, who they had Justin Zwick, who was the quote unquote top career passer in Ohio, and quote unquote the guy at quarterback, and they end up ultimately turning the reins over to Troy Smith midway through their third year, and he ends up in his fifth year winning the Heisman Trophy. You just can't. There are so many variables in college football. You can never predict, where the ball is headed or who's going to be that guy, because so many things can happen off the field and injury wise to take you out of whatever it is that you do. But to have a class like that, they signed like 25 guys, and they had 40 seasons of guys who started games. They had 12 guys drafted out of the 25 or 26. 4 or 5 of them were first round. So those are the kind of classes that you dream about. Ohio State is in the process in 2020 of putting together that type of a class, and I think it's going to be fun for Ohio State people over the next 5 years to see where the ball is headed.
That 2013 class, which led to the 2015 team, is also up there with Ezekiel Elliott and Joey Bosa, Darren Lee, Billy Price are both redshirt freshmen on that national championship team, Eli Apple. So there's a pretty impressive group in that class as well. The 2015 team for me, I just feel like it was just parts. And then they came in fat and happy, like Steve said. There were suspensions to start the season. You lose Tom Herman, I think, is overlooked as well. And really, people you look at the talent, and yeah, you put that team way up there. But as a team, I don't, give me the 2016 team, or especially with that pass defense that the 2016 team had, and both teams had Bosa's, so that kind of evens out there. But I just, the 2015 team for me is more of a disappointment than, oh man, they would beat anybody. 2014 team, I saw what they could do, and every piece fit perfectly, and sometimes multiple pieces had to be used, like we saw at quarterback. And Ezekiel Elliott wasn't even really the full-time starting running back until about week 6. Curtis Samuel had a start as a freshman that year at running back, and Zeke, I think, had he was getting like 60 yards a game for the first 3 or 4 games because they were still trying to figure things out. And yet by the end of the season, and that's one reason why he wasn't, I don't even think he was all Big Ten that year, because he went into the playoffs with like 1,400 yards rushing or something. He wasn't an All-American. He wins the Sullivan Award as the top amateur athlete in the nation, but he doesn't have a tree in Buckeye Grove, which is pretty crazy. And I think there needs to be something for what he did at Ohio State, because I don't know if there's any better running back than Ezekiel Elliott to come through here, and for there to be no, and J.K. Dobbins, I think, is the same thing. I don't know that he had a first-team All-American nod this past year, which, but that's Ohio State, and I know some people don't want to get hung up on who gets their trees for being an All-American, but I guess it's a lot of good players who don't get recognized as much as they should, or as much as, should a first-team All-American punter have a tree and Ezekiel Elliott not? Maybe that's a discussion for another day.
You're sending me to the Wayback Machine now. Like, who got All-American ahead of him in 2015 when he had 1,800 yards or whatever it was? I mean, he had another great season in 2015, although, maybe people held it against them that they lost the one game. I don't know, but for All-American running back, I would think he had to be mentioned on somebody's team that next year. I'm going to make that a project now to try and figure out who was the All-American running back in 2015.
Well, and I know some of those teams were coming out before the playoffs, but like Saquon Barkley, Melvin Gordon, and Tevin Coleman both rushed for over 2,000 yards in the Big Ten that year. So that's one reason why Elliott wasn't an All-American there.
Leonard Fournette and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, so
this here,
those
are good players. Those are good players.
Was that in 14 or 15?
15.
Yeah, Derrick Henry won the Heisman, and Fournette was the Heisman
Elliott was
most of the season.
Elliott was second team AP with Dalvin Cook that year from Florida State.
Those are some good running backs.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey was on some teams he was picked, but primarily Fournette and Henry. Yeah,
I was a McCaffrey Heisman guy in 2015.